LLB course or any other segment of law courses, referring the leading case of the Supreme Court is one of the most important factor, and it's one way for the lawyers. It's a backbone for to support their case. So, how to refer and what are the leading cases on this particular subject or a particular topic? One should know. See, as far as forensic science and medical jurisprudence, in which so much technical things will come, and the role of the police officers and investigating department plays a very important role. Without them, this kind of technical matters is highly difficult to solve by the judiciary. So therefore, the Nimbalkar madam has having a past experience in this particular field, and she will enlighten our students with respect to this particular topic. Now, always I am telling to you people that without the support of our respected principal ma'am, it is highly impossible for us to do so much programs within a span, a small or a short span of time. But whenever if we stand in front of ma'am, she will never say no. Sometimes I felt really it was inconvenient to do this kind of program, because ma'am is going to give opportunity for all faculty members, but still she agreed to have a session for these students, and really I am obliged for that. And now I am requesting my colleague, Professor Vanitha Mohod, to give an address of Girisha Nimbalkar ma'am. Please, Vanitha ma'am, continue.
Okay, thank you, sir. Good afternoon, Principal ma'am, Dr. Ujjwala Shinde, Police Inspector of and Speaker of today's session, Ms. Girisha Nimbalkar ma'am, and all of the participants of the webinar. It's my indeed privilege to introduce such an eminent personality, that is Police Inspector Ms. Girisha Nimbalkar ma'am. Ma'am is presently posted at Maharashtra Intelligence Academy, Pune, since November 2020, that is 2020. Previously, ma'am served at Nashik City, Pune City, Crime Investigation Department, Mumbai, and ma'am has actually vast experience in cyber and economic offenses. Ma'am is awarded with 2 medals in law and medico-legal science at AIPDM, that is All India Police Duty Meet, Chennai in 2018. The compendium is also written by ma'am on landmark case laws of Honorable Supreme Court regarding these investigations, which is published by CPR Pune. So it's really an opportunity for all of us to listen ma'am today on the topic important decisions of the Supreme Court of India with regard to or with special reference to forensic science. So I once again welcome you, ma'am, and ma'am, you can continue with the topic.
Thank you, Vanitha ma'am. First of all, good afternoon, everybody. I would like to thank Dr. D.Y. Patil Law College authorities for inviting me. I would like to thank Lakshman sir and Vanitha ma'am for inviting me here. Okay. Today, we will start with our topic, important decisions of Supreme Court of India with special reference to forensic science. So we are going to discuss 4 or 5 important case laws today. Before starting the case laws, we will discuss in brief what is meant by forensic science. So forensic science is basically application of science to the matters of law. It might be civil law or criminal law. So application of various sciences for the upliftment of the judicial process, or for drawing some conclusive nature of evidences. The application of science in the matters of law is basically forensic science. And whenever forensic science is applied in judicial processes, very important principle we have to discuss here, that is Locard principle of exchange. And that principle is every contact leave a trace. Means whenever there is contact between victim, suspect, and crime scene, every ingredient leaves the trace with each other. Whenever there is a crime scene and there is victim and suspect, they came in contact at the time of crime activity, they leave the traces of each other with it is a mutual sharing of the traces. It might be a physical evidence, biological evidence, chemical evidence, and on that principle, the forensic science, on this principle, the forensic science is very vital, becoming vital in crime investigation. So on the basis of this principle, the application of forensic science to the investigation process is there. And we are going to see the landmark case laws of Supreme Court of India. Whenever there is application of forensic science for the investigation process, the basic is whether while applying the forensic science to the procedures of investigation, we have to whether we are not violating the constitutional provisions and rights of the accused. So the basic constitutional provision we are discussing, we are going to discuss one vital constitutional provision. On the basis of that, various interpretations are made by the Supreme Court of India regarding the application of various forensic science techniques. So that constitutional provision is Article 20 of Constitution. This Article 20 of Constitution is regarding protection in respect of conviction of offenses. Okay, the clause 1 of that article gives the protection from ex post facto laws. Ex post facto laws means no person shall be punished for any offense if his action or his act of commission of that act is before the enactment of that law. So, for example, no person can be punished for the demand of dowry if he demands the dowry before the enactment of the Dowry Prohibition Act 1961. So there is a protection by Constitution against the ex post facto laws. Second thing is double jeopardy. Double jeopardy means no person shall be prosecuted or punished for the same offense more than once. So if there is any action of or any offense committed by a person, he gets the punishment under our laws and in our Constitution. There is provision that he can't be punished for more than one time for the same offense. This is protection against double jeopardy. And then third and most important, which is having more relevance with the forensic science, that is protection against self-incrimination. Self-incrimination means no person accused of any offense shall be compelled to be witnessed against himself. So no person can be compelled to be witness against himself. Every person has protection by Constitution that he can't be compelled to be witness against himself. And we are going to see some case laws regarding this provision of this constitutional provision only. Okay, we'll start with the case laws now. The first case law is the State of Bombay versus Kathi Kalu Hogad and others. This case law is of 1961. This is 11 judges bench case law. This is second largest bench of Supreme Court ever. So in this case law, Supreme Court discussed whether the compelling accused to give his specimen signature or fingerprint or handwriting specimen is violative of Article 23 of Constitution or not. So we have earlier discussed the Article 20 Clause 3 of Constitution, that no person accused of any offense shall be compelled to be witness against himself. In this case law, the Supreme Court interpreted that to be witness, the phrase to be witness against himself, the to be witness is not equivalent to furnishing the evidence. So if somebody in police custody is giving handwriting of specimen or signature or fingerprint, footprint, his palm prints, whether it amounts to be a witness against himself. So Supreme Court interpreted that it cannot amount to be a witness against himself, because it is in broad sense, in wider sense, it is not equivalent to furnishing the evidence. So if accused is providing his handwriting, specimen, signature, or fingerprint impressions, the law enforcement agencies are empowered to take that specimens from the accused during the process of investigation. Section 73 of Indian Evidence Act empowers the judiciary to demand the specimens, fingerprints, or signature specimens, or handwriting specimens for the purpose of comparison. So it is the right of the judicial system and the right of the law enforcement agency to get the specimen signatures and fingerprints, and it is not at all violative of Article 20, Clause 3, that is self-incrimination. Okay, Section 5 and Section 6 of Prisoners Act empowers the magistrate to obtain the photo and body measurements of the accused. So it is also not violative of Article 20, Clause 3. So this is very landmark judgment which provides, which enlarges the scope of forensic science, application of forensic science during the investigation, because if during the formation of Constitution, the makers of Constitution can never think that the process of crime investigation should get hampered from the rights of the accused. So to be a witness, this phrase is not equivalent to furnishing the evidence. So this is very landmark judgment from the forensic use and to widen the scope of forensic science in the in crime investigation. So there is no infringement of Article 20 of Constitution by compelling the accused person to give his specimen handwriting or signature, because the investigation officer or the court has a power to take that specimens for the purpose of comparison, as provided in Section 73 of Indian Evidence Act. We'll move on to next judgment now. This is also very, very landmark judgment in the field of forensic science, that is Selvi and other versus State of Karnataka and another. This is 2010 judgment. This is also 3 judges bench judgment, and this is regarding the administration of various scientific techniques, that is narcoanalysis, polygraph examination, then brain electrical activation profile. These are the tests. These are used for the improvement of the investigation, and these tests help the investigating agencies to get the future plan of future investigation workout plan. So whether these techniques are violative of, again, Article 23 of the Constitution, that is right against self-incrimination. So this judgment interprets that, elaborates that the compulsory administration of these scientific techniques, compulsory administration for the purpose of improving the investigation efforts, violates the rights against self-incrimination. Yes, it is violative if it is not voluntary. So there must be a consent of accused while implementing these techniques for the purpose of crime investigation. No individual should be forcibly subject to any of these techniques, whether in context of investigation of in criminal cases or otherwise. So doing so amount to the unwarranted intrusion in personal liberty of that person. So the person, if he is willing to undergo these tests, during the process of investigation, then and then only these techniques, forensic techniques can be applied. So, however, the voluntary administration of the implange technique in context of criminal justice, provided that certain safeguards are in place, is permitted. So after taking some safeguards, and if the accused is consenting for these techniques, for application of these techniques, then court allowed these techniques, and it is not violative of section Article 23 if it is voluntary. Even when the subject has given the consent to undergo this test, the test results themselves cannot be admitted as evidence. If accused is consenting for such techniques and the investigation agencies are undergoing the narco-analysis or polygraph test or BEAP, the results of that test cannot be admitted as evidence by the court of law, because that person, while undergoing this test, do not have any conscious control over the responses. That person is not having any conscious control over his responses. So these evidences, whatever the outcome of this test, cannot be admitted as evidence before the court of law. Then what is the use of these techniques? If it is not going to admit as evidence, then these voluntary administered test results, that can be admitted in accordance with the Section 27 of Indian Evidence Act. What Section 27 of Indian Evidence Act says? The statement of accused while in the custody of police, anything, thing or fact discovered, any new thing or fact discovered out of that statement is admissible under Section 27 of Indian Evidence Act. So while administration of these forensic techniques, narco-analysis or polygraph test or BEAP profiling, if there is discovery of new fact or new thing as a result of that test, that new fact or that new thing can be admitted as evidence under Section 27 of Indian Evidence Act. But the results of test as a whole cannot be admitted as evidence. I hope you people are getting the points. Then while administration of these tests, these polygraph test, the National Human Rights Commission has given some guidelines in year 2000. And in the judgment of Selvi versus State of Karnataka, all these guidelines, the court has elaborated all these guidelines again. While administration of polygraph test, lie detector test, the guidelines given by National Human Rights Commission in 2000 should be strictly adhered. And the similar safeguards should be adopted for conducting the narco analysis also and BEAP test also. So in this judgment, the Supreme Court has elaborated all these guidelines. So we are going to see the important guidelines of NHRC, which are given in year 2000 regarding the administration of polygraph test. So we will see the guidelines one by one. No lie detector test should be administered except on the basis of consent of accused. An option should be given to accused whether he wishes to avail such test. So the consent of accused is of prime importance, and the option whether he is willing to go for that test or not is with accused and not with the investigating agencies. That is at the liberty of the accused, whether he is willing, whether he is ready to undergo these tests during the process of investigation. And if such accused volunteers for the lie detector test, he should be given the access to the lawyer. If the accused is consenting for undergoing such test, he has to be given the access to his lawyer. And the physical, emotional, and legal implication of this test. What are the physical impacts of this test? What are emotional impacts? And what is the legal implication of the outcome of this test? All these has to be explained to the accused by the police or by his, and also by his lawyer. So if anybody is willing to undergo the polygraph test or lie detector test, what are its physical implications, emotional implications, legal implications? It has to be explained to the accused by the lawyer, by his lawyer, as well as by investigating officer. This is very vital guideline of NHRC. The second and third most important guideline is the consent should be recorded before judicial magistrate. If accused is consenting to police, accused is consenting to his lawyer, accused is consenting to some executive magistrate, it is not sufficient. The consent has to be recorded before the judicial magistrate. If he freely given consent in front of judicial magistrate, then and then only this test can be carried out. Fourth guideline is, during the hearing before magistrate, the person alleged to have agreed should be duly represented by lawyer. Means his consent has to be recorded before judicial magistrate, and at the time of recording the consent, his lawyer has to be present there. Fifth guideline is, at the hearing, the person in question should also be told in clear terms that the statement that is made shall not be a confessional statement. It has a status of statement to a police. So whatever statement he is going to give in front of judicial magistrate, that statement does not mean a confessional statement given to magistrate. It has a value of statement given to police, that is under CRPC 161, means it can be used for contradiction only. It cannot be used for corroboration purpose. Then the next guideline is, the magistrate shall consider all factors relating to the detention, including length of detention and nature of interrogation. This guideline is for examining or for evaluating whether the consent is voluntary or not. If the accused is under long detention or is going to be detained after a test also with the police, he might consent in police pressure. So what is the length of detention and how is the nature of interrogation? These things the magistrate has to consider before recording the consent of the accused. This is only for getting the free and voluntary consent without the pressure of the investigating agencies. And the seventh guideline is, actual recording of lie detector test shall be done by an independent agency. If the accused is consenting, the lie detector test cannot be carried out at police station and cannot be carried out by investigation agency. It has to be carried out by an independent agency like hospital. As person is going to lose his physiological controls or conscious controls over himself, the test has to be conducted by the proper agency like hospital, and while conducting that test, the lawyer of that accused should be present. So it is carried out in presence of lawyer of the accused. And last guideline is, a full medical and factual narration of the manner of information received from the test must be taken on record. Means whatever information is that law enforcement agency is going to get from the lie detector test or narcoanalysis test, full factual, medical and factual narration is required, because person gives variable physiological responses to various questions. So what is the medical response, what is the physical response, and to which question, what is the actual response from the accused? All factual and medical narration must be recorded, must be taken on record, so as to elaborate or so as to analyze the physiological responses to the true and false questions. So this is the Selvi versus State of Karnataka judgment, and it is regarding the various new forensic techniques that are utilized for the betterment of investigation, but that has to be on the guidelines, or that should not increase the basic rights of the accused against self-incrimination. So court has elaborated under what conditions this test has to be carried out and what is the evidential value of the outcome of the test. So from this lie detector, polygraph and brain mapping test point of view, this is very, very vital judgment. Then we are going to see the third judgment, Ritesh Sinha versus State of Uttar Pradesh. This is 2019 judgment. This is again 3 judges bench judgment. And this judgment is regarding providing the voice sample of the accused. Again, in some cases, the evidences of the case involves the voice communication between accused and victim, between witnesses and accused and victim. So in order to make that evidence relevant or admissible in the court of law, there has to be comparison of the voice samples. So the voice samples of the accused and victims and witnesses are required in various investigations, especially in anti-corruption cases. If the demand is on telephonic demand is there, or if some video recording is there at the time of the demand, or some other cases, even in cyber cases also and in economic offenses also, if there some verbal communication is there and the record of verbal communication is available during the process of investigation or while registering the case, then to authenticate that verbal communication, we have to compare the voice samples. And for comparing the voice samples, we have to get the voice sample again from accused and witnesses. So providing the voice sample from the accused, is it again incriminating? So it is not incriminating, self-incriminating. So judicial magistrate can direct an accused to provide his voice samples for investigation even without consent. So consent of accused is not at all compulsory for taking the voice samples, and judicial magistrate has power to order the accused to give his voice samples for investigation purpose. Right now, there is no provision in CRPC regarding any order from the judicial magistrate or there is no provision which empowers the judicial magistrate to give such order to investigation agency to take the voice samples without the consent. But in this judgment in 2019, the court has made these things clear that such powers has to be conferred to the magistrate by the process of judicial interpretation and in exercise of jurisdiction vested in this court under Article 142 of Constitution India. As long as there are no provisions in CRPC, judicial magistrate must be considered the powers to order the person to give the samples of his voice for the purpose of investigation of crime. So this is very, very vital judgment from the taking the voice samples of the accused. And as there is no provision in CRPC, this judgment empowers the judicial magistrate to direct the accused to give the voice samples even without consent of accused. So this is very important judgment. We'll move on to next judgment. This is SPS Rathore versus CBI and another 2017 judgment. This is regarding the scope of evidential value of handwriting expert opinion. In various cases, the comparison of handwriting is done by the handwriting experts, and that their analysis report is produced in the court of law. But what is the evidential value of that handwriting expert report? This judgment elaborates the evidential value. In this case, the signature of deceased was forged by the accused, and the handwriting opinion, expert's opinion was sought. So, on the basis of this, that evidence, the court elaborated the scope of evidential value of handwriting expert's opinion. The court said that expert evidence as a handwriting is only opinion evidence. It can never be conclusive. So handwriting expert is not a perfect science. So it's like a fingerprint science or like DNA fingerprinting. These are perfect science. So handwriting expert's opinion cannot be treated as perfect science. So that evidential value of that report cannot be, never be conclusive. It is only opinion evidence. And if on the sole evidence of the handwriting expert opinion, no interpretation or no definite findings can be worked out by the judiciary. So sole evidence of handwriting expert is not normally sufficient for recording a definite finding about the writing of being certain person or not. So if handwriting expert has given opinion about the handwriting of certain person, this is yes or no, that evidence cannot be conclusive. That is only opinion, and it is considered as expert opinion, but it cannot be treated as conclusive evidence. The opinion of handwriting expert is also relevant in view of Section 45 Indian Evidence Act, but that too is not conclusive. There is provision in Indian Evidence Act regarding the expert opinion, and the opinion of handwriting expert is relevant under Section 45 of Indian Evidence Act. It is relevant, it is not conclusive. It is already mentioned in Indian Evidence Act. It is further elaborated by this court in this judgment. So before acting on such evidence, it is usual to see if it is corroborated either by clear or direct evidence or circumstantial evidence. So before relying on that expert's opinion, it has to be corroborated with direct or clear evidence. Direct and clear evidences are very vital. And if the handwriting expert opinion is corroborating that evidences, then it has vital importance. It has to be in correlation with the circumstantial evidence. So on the sole basis of handwriting expert opinion, court or judiciary cannot draw a definite conclusion. We'll move on to next judgment now. This is the judgment regarding recording the evidence by the court of law or by the judiciary by the use of video conferencing. The judgment is State of Maharashtra versus Dr. Praful B. Desai, 2003 judgment. The background of the judgment is the question for consideration was whether a criminal trial evidence could be recorded by video conferencing. In criminal trial, the witnesses, the victims has to appear before the court physically, and then they deposit their evidence. And this is the routine working system of the judiciary. This judgment cracked the previous routine procedures and very landmark decision given by the Supreme Court that video conferencing is an advancement of science and technology. So video conferencing permits seeing, hearing, talking, whatever things the person is going to perform in front of the judiciary by attending the physical court are possible through video conferencing also. So video conferencing technique is basic advancement of science and technology, and that permits the seeing, hearing, and talking with someone who is not physically present with the same facility. So physical presence is not important from the judiciary evidence recording point of view. That can be substituted by the video conferencing. So this judgment gives the legal requirement for the presence of witness does not mean actual physical presence. And the court allowed the examination of witness through video conferencing. So video conferencing witnessing is allowed in criminal cases. This is landmark judgment of 2003, which saves the time, money, and various efforts of the judiciary, law enforcement agencies, and it is definitely going to help in speedy disposal of the cases, as it saves timing. And fortunately, after this corona pandemic, various courts have started the video conferencing as a routine, and high courts are also working by video conferencing. So this is the landmark judgment where criminal cases procedures or criminal deposition of evidence in criminal trial is allowed by video conferencing. Then next judgment is Manohar Lal Sharma versus Union of India. This is 2014 judgment. This judgment again highlights the role of forensic science in criminal investigation. So the blending of science with traditional investigation techniques. What are traditional investigation techniques? Are basically based on the interrogation, custodial interrogation, and the informers. So forensic science is a blend of, basically forensic science is multidisciplinary approach. Various sciences come together to assist in judicial processes. So blending of science with traditional criminal investigation techniques offer new horizons of efficiency in criminal investigation, which reduces the dependence upon informers and custodial interrogation and concentrates upon skilled scanning of crime scene for collection of physical evidence. So crime scene is the place where our initially discussed principle of exchange, Locard's principle of exchange, works at the most. If the crime scene is scanned skillfully, there ample physical evidences are available, which gives the further workout plan for the investigation agency, how to operate and how to find the further links, rather than going with the routine or traditional criminal investigation techniques. So this judgment highlighted the use or vitality of the forensic science in criminal investigation. These courts are also encouraging, apex courts are encouraging the use of forensic science in criminal investigation. Again, one more judgment regarding the same views of the court. Dharamdev Yadav versus State of UP. In this judgment also, the crime scene management and importance of forensic science is elaborated by the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court himself emphasized on the need to adopt the scientific techniques for crime detection. The court has emphasized the need to adopt scientific methods in crime detection to save the judicial system from low conviction rates. One of the most important challenges faced by the Indian judicial system is very, very low conviction rates, and that could be uplifted only and only by the use of scientific methods in crime detection. So, usual traditional detection methods and traditional evidences are giving very low conviction rates because the various options available to the witnesses. As we emphasize on the witness, the hostile witnesses are increasing, and the low speed trials by the court, the witnesses and the victim reduce their conviction for getting the justice. Means justice delayed is like justice denied. In that fashion, they reduce the interest, and then it results. This is also one of the reasons of low conviction rates. So if law enforcement agencies adopt the scientific techniques for detection of crime, the science is foolproof science, and with the progression of days, the science cannot reduce his interest. So the results remain same. So the low conviction rate issue can be sorted out by maximum implementation of science in the crime investigation. And the court in this judgment further highlighted the need to strengthen the forensic science for crime detection. So forensic science has to be strengthened for the purpose of crime detection. And in fact, our government is also taking various steps to strengthen the forensic science by providing the various advanced equipment to the law enforcement agencies for the purpose of investigation. And the importance and vitality of forensic science is nowadays proved that it is the need of future, and the importance of forensic science is ever increasing in the field of law enforcement and in the field of judiciary as well. So with this, I have done. I hope you all understand how, and you all get something new from this session. With this, I'm done. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everybody.
Students, if you ask anything with respect to crime investigation matters, you can ask.
Sir, one slide was remaining.
Yes.
18th slide.
No. I have taken 18th first and then reverse 17.
Okay.
The 17 got skipped. That's why I have got back to that slide and I have covered each and every slide.
Thank you.
Any of you, if you want to ask anything with in connection with the criminal investigations and the forensic detections, you can ask with Nimbalkar ma'am. If any one of you, yes.
You elaborate on video conferencing allowed. So can you give some extra inputs on that?
See, in criminal investigation, each and every witness and every victim has to appear physically before the court of law. Whatever the deposition made by the witnesses has to be made physically in front of the magistrate. So in video conferencing, the arrangement of video conferencing, just like I am speaking with you, you can see me, you can hear me, and I can hear you. In the same system, the video conferencing systems are established in every court, in majority of courts, not in every court. And witnesses in criminal cases, for example, I have worked in Nashik, and if I have investigated one case in Nashik city, and right now that case is on board, and to deposit the evidence as an IO, I have to go all the way to Nashik and remain physically present there. Instead of that, court allowed the video conferencing, means they will send me the date, and at that time I have to sit in front of my laptop or in front of where the video conferencing facilities are available at our all units, all police units. I have to sit there and I have to deposit my witness. So it will save my time, the judiciary's time, and then expenses of the government to send all the way one IO to Nashik and then he get back. And for the single witness of half an hour or 1 hour, I have to spend whole day. So video conferencing saves the time of judiciary and all witnesses and all law enforcement agencies. So this is very, very vital judgment.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am.
Anybody is having anything to ask? Hope everybody cleared about your concepts, and ma'am explained about the various judgments and the forensic importance or significance. Now I request Ajay sir to express his vote of thanks.
Good afternoon, one and all. It's a privilege to extend vote of thanks to such a knowledgeable webinar. First of all, I would like to extend my hearty vote of thanks to our today's guest speaker, Girisha Nimbalkar ma'am, for gracing today's webinar. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your very thought-provoking, informative, and interesting webinar. I'm pretty sure that today's webinar will benefit all the attendees. Also, I thank our Honorable Principal Ma'am, Dr. Ujwala Shinde Ma'am, who always guides us, inspires us, and standing as a pillar of strength. Also, I would like to say thank to our DY Patil Lunatic Society's management for their kind support. Also, I thank our teaching, non-teaching, and technical staff for their help. Last but not the least, I would like to appreciate our students, participants for their presence. Without their presence, the event was impossible. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Nimbalkar ma'am.
Thank you.
Students, fill the feedback form and attendance.
Yes, sir. Very informative, sir. Thank you so much. We can have, if ma'am has more time, we can have one more of her session.
We'll see to it, but time is short, and we are having a lot of things to cover. So let us see to it in the future point of time. Huh?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yes, yes, yes.
Is everyone done with feedback and attendance?
Yes.
Yes, we will end up the session then.